Welcome to the Access Sport podcast, your best chance to learn more about our students, our teams and our programmes.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Across, I was about to say Across the Park, and that's my other podcast, the Access Sport podcast. You know what, you'll notice if you watch the last episode, there's like a delay when I'm about to say it, because I've got the wrong mask on. But yeah, it is the Access Sport podcast. Myself, Gary Judge, director at Access Sport, and we've got Jordan Niels, who is our head of careers. And we're delighted to be joined by Liam Barrett, Director of US Sports Scholarships. Thanks for joining us, Liam.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Cheers, Jordan.
Yeah, looking forward to this, mate. I mean, obviously the sort of what would you call it? The layer of America has always been there for people who are into sport. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to sort of getting into this and learning more about it, especially for our learners. But before we get into that, just your sort of journey from, the UK to America and sort of everything in between.
Yeah, sure. I mean, similar to you're saying there, like when I heard about the opportunity to go out to the States, it was like a real no-brainer for me. But also, like countless thousands of lads within the UK that are obsessed with football, growing up, all I wanted to do was become a professional footballer, as does every lad that's interested in the sport. So I was an Ipswich fan. I know we used to be decent, not so much anymore, but there's some history there for sure. But so I was at Ipswich from like under 8. I always supported the club as my local team and kind of managed to get a scholarship and progress. But then unfortunately, during the 4 years there, pretty much racked up more surgeries than appearances, I think. So I had 4 knee ops in 2 years and pretty much got told at the end of that should probably retire. So I had all the cartilage taken out of my knees and probably played, like 8 games in 2 years. They did extend it and give me a 3rd-year scholar. But I was pretty certain at that point that the writing was on the wall for me in terms of, making it as a pro. So at that point, I think I probably had a company come in and talk about the opportunities in America. And back then, it's not like now where social media is so prevalent. Or pretty sure if we asked any of your learners, do you know someone who's been out to the States on a scholarship? And they'll probably know, or they've seen someone on scholarship. So for me, it was quite foreign. And I think unless you've got other people that you can speak to and have that experience, it is quite daunting, particularly if you're an 18-year-old kind of not knowing what you want to do, because I'd gone from an environment where it's been my life, that's all I'd wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, well, we're not going to offer you anything. And again, this is the same story. And luckily, after, player care and what you do, Jordan, with Gary, is that is there for the lads. But sounding like an old man, back when I was doing it, it wasn't really that. It was like, cheers for being at the academy for 10 years. See you later. And that's not a reflection specifically on Ipswich. I think that was the case across the whole country. And at that time, I dropped down, was playing semi-professional for a team called Bury Town, which again, I really enjoyed, was good standard. And I think for a lot of lads, it's great experience to go from an academy environment where the results don't matter and it's about playing nice football to it's all about the result and getting the point. So that helped develop my game. And then luckily Ipswich did provide support in the sense that I did my B license and started coaching at the academy. And they were really helpful. There's opportunities to go into full-time coaching, but I felt as a 17, 18-year-old trying to coach under 18s, it just quite didn't feel right. And naturally, I probably wouldn't give someone the respect if they were the same age as me, unless they'd gone on to probably the first team. So, and yeah, I think I was working part-time in Specsavers. So no disrespect to that, but it's cool when you're 17, you probably earn a little bit of money, with the 3 different routes, but I didn't want to be doing that when I was 40. So yeah, the minute I heard about America, I was literally like, what, I can go to the States, come out debt-free, play football every day. It was like a no-brainer. My sister, she went to uni in London and ended up probably paying her debt off for the next 10 years following graduation. So when someone said, oh, you fancy living in, I think my experience of Chicago probably been Chicago Bulls and knowing who Michael Jordan is was pretty much what I knew, but that was enough for me to want to go there. And I went to a school that was $160,000 over 4 years and came out completely debt free, which is still mind blowing. Like, I know there's scholarship opportunities in the UK, but it's just crazy. They can go, look, Gary, here, look, Jordan, here's 40 grand a year. Do you want to come and just play for the school and we'll pay for all your fees? It's just absolute bonkers. So yeah, so following that, I then still don't know why, but I did decide to move back to Ipswich, which a bit of a strange one. But following that, and ironically, me and two other guys who started the business had terrible experiences using companies that were meant to help us get out to America. And without boring you too much on it, was, for example, I never got told I had to take an entrance exam. I also never got told I needed to get cleared by the eligibility centre. So that actually meant I had to take a gap year, which was okay because I was able to work, save up some money and play semi-pro. But ultimately, it was a year of my life a little bit wasted where I could have got out straight to America if I'd have had good guidance. And then also a couple of years after I'd been out there, I did fairly well. So I got All American of the Year for the entire country, 2011 and 12. And I thought I could probably play at a higher level and get a better scholarship. And I can tell you kind of how the cost system worked. But yeah, so I wanted to look into that. And the company I went through said, well, you'll have to pay us $3,000 again to help you. And I said, well, hang on a minute. When I signed up to the process, what the whole point was, you're going to be there for me throughout until I graduate. There must have been a really small asterisk in white font at the bottom of the page that said you'd have to pay for it again. So I said, look, just give me my highlights and I'll promote myself to the other schools. Oh, well, we own your video, so you'd have to pay $2,000 for that. So basically, it was clear for me they didn't care about me, or there was no aftercare. The only aftercare was worrying about getting more money out of me and my family. Ironically, when I won those awards, they wanted to push that everywhere all over their website, but not actually provide the support. So the long story short there was, when we started this just as a hobby, we said, well, look, if we are going to help any players, we want to provide the service that we would have wanted. So we're selective in how many we represent. So we actually only restrict ourselves to 25 male, 25 female athletes per sport. So soccer, rugby, track and field, so across all of them. So we've still got a good volume of clients, but we know that they're going to get that personal service. And then, yeah, it's just kind of grown from that. It was just a passion project. And then now we've got over 50 people working for us throughout the world in different capacities for it. We've placed over 1,000 athletes now in over 600 schools in 40 different states. So yeah, we've just been really lucky, and it's great for me because I can still pretend that I'm good at football, even though I know I'm slow and not good, but also kind of still within and help kind of the next generation with it.
It's so interesting, like the link towards. I mean, we were speaking just before we come on air, so to speak. It was the link between now in the UK and the US, as you rightly touched on. It seemed a million miles away, maybe like 10, 15 years ago. But in terms of like learners who might be sort of in our colleges or our centres, what do you need to have in order just to start the process? I'm not talking about getting, being successful or going out there or getting placed or whatever, but what do you need to have both as a person and academically just to get the process going?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the key things is time, which seems like a silly one, but for example, if you've got students that are coming in as first years, and I'm assuming it's like a 2 or 3 year course.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So actually, you want to kind of know about this and plant the seed and start working towards it in year one, because the problem is if you wait until you've finished year two and say that finishes in May or June, and then you want to go out in August, all the scholarships have gone. So, we'll get lads that contact us in like March. I want to go out in August, and we'll be like, well, you've left it too late, and they can't get their head around it. They're like, well, that's months away. The thing is, I know it's optimistic in football to think you'll still be in a job 3 or 4 years' time, but out there, because they know the degree's 4 years. So if you two guys are forwards, and I know you're both going to graduate in 4 years, well, I know I'm losing my forwards in 4 years. So already in my head, I'm thinking, well, for that year, I want 2 forwards. Maybe for the year before, I need a goalkeeper. So really, by starting the process like 18 to 24 months in advance of going out, ideally, you're just putting yourself on an equal par with those American students, because what you've got to think is, if I'm good at football or soccer in America and I'm 15 years old, 100% I'm already thinking about what college I want to go to when I finish, because they don't do BTEC and A-level. They go high school to college. So you don't realise at the time, but you're actually behind them in terms of recruitment. And look, hopefully we'll give them a hiding in the World Cup, because I can't deal with the I'll get if we don't. I'm actually going to the game, which will be exciting. But yeah, it's the football out there is good, and a lot of people underestimate it. So we'll have lads, oh, can I go straight to Major League Soccer? And it's like, well, who are you playing for over here? And you go through the college system, you prove yourself for 4 years, and we do have lads that do go pro. But ultimately, whether you do or you don't, you've still got a degree to set yourself up for the next stage of your career. So time's going to be critical. Beyond that, academically, actually, whether you're an A grade student or you're a C or a D, or obviously on the number system 4 and below, it's not as important. We can still find a route for you. So for the most academic, they're going to want to go straight to a 4-year university and get a degree.
Yeah.
But if you're not the most academic, but you're a top player, you can go to what's called a community college. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Yeah.
So basically, the football can be just as good, but the academics are going to be easier. And as a result, the schools are typically cheaper. Go there for 2 years, prove yourself, get your grades up, and then we would transfer you over to a 4-year school to top it up to a degree. So still 4 years total. A lot of kids think, oh, does that mean 6 years? And I'll give you an example quickly. There's a guy called Dom Dwyer who you might not have heard of, but basically he got released by Norwich and then he went to Tyler Community College, which is one of the best in the nation. Then he did 2 years in Florida. Then he got drafted and now he's one of the top scorers in the MLS history. He actually got American citizenship because he married an American and ended up playing twice for the States. So he's a really good example of going full circle. And I think that as with football, if you're good enough, you'll eventually get picked up regardless of how long it takes you. So academics isn't too important. The timeline is, and then ultimately footage. Pre-COVID, a lot of coaches would fly over and watch you, but obviously because of travel restrictions, the video footage is becoming really important. So we hold trials pretty much every month. I think we've actually got one up at Tranmere Rovers, kind of near you guys relatively soon. And before, we've had ones in Norwich, Sheffield as well, throughout other centres that you guys have got. Because if I could say, look, Jordan's an unbelievable goal scorer, and then I send a coach 5 minutes of him missing chances, he's probably not going to go, oh, I'm going to give him $250,000 to come and play for us for the next 4 years. So I think they're kind of the most important things. But ultimately, I think it's just information, because a lot of lads, even though it is more mainstream, don't really understand what they need to do and when it all kind of what entails as well, other than just going out there and playing football.
I mean, what you just said then was really interesting, because I mean, I've been guilty, I suppose, of somewhat misadvising some of our students, and that's come from someone who spent a couple of years over in the States as a coach, and I seen it from their side. Literally, I do one-to-ones with players who are 13, 14 years old because the mum and dad were desperate for them to get a scholarship. So I know how early over there they think about it, and I know that it's ingrained in some of the children and the families from a very early age that, look, this is our ticket, as parents, to kind of save ourselves $100,000 or whatever if we can get you a scholarship. But having said that, like I started saying there, I've been guilty of pushing our second years towards the likes of yourselves, rather than saying, look, as soon as you join us, even before you join us, you need to be thinking about this and preparing yourself, on a number of levels to get ready for that potential transition.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, look, ultimately it's a massive decision, not just for the player, but his family. But once you decided you want to do it, why not give yourself more time so that people like us can promote you for longer? But also, it's just a numbers game. There's more scholarships available. So if we're looking like 2023 right now, probably about 30% are gone. By the time we get to March, that'll be flipping. It'll be 70% are gone. And when you're dealing with thousands of schools, there's still going to be good scholarships out there, but it's like a transfer window, right? When you get towards the end and the deals have already been done, you're probably not going to get that move that you want. But you touch on a good point, Gary, because that's why Americans got this stereotype of being pushy parents. It's like, even if when I have kids, I'm going to be pushy to make sure they get a good scholarship out there as well. So,
in terms of,
sorry, John, I just want to go briefly back to near the start of your journey from a football point of view, because you touched on something that I think is really important for our players to think about. And you talked about semi-pro football, dropping down and playing at a level that at the time was maybe the highest level you could have played at from a senior point of view. I'm a big advocate of, if you're not able to play at that, at that professional level, or you don't get a scholarship at a professional club, that for me, provided you're physically developed enough, that you should be looking to play men's football at whatever level you can as early as possible. What are your thoughts on that from a football development point of view?
No, 100%. So another misconception is, oh, these guys are only working with 25 players. They must all be ex-academy. Some of the best guys we've ever sent out to the States have never been at an academy at all. And there's definitely pros and cons, and you can argue it. But obviously in an academy setting where results don't matter, so maybe there's less on the line for it. When you're playing with men, all of a sudden, different elements of the game become a lot more important. So we've got like 16-year-old lads who are playing like, for example, in Lowestoft, we've got lads there who are playing first team football. That's incredible at their age to be playing that.
Yeah.
And often they'll be the ones that the American coaches want. And that's another reason why you can be a transfer student. So you could, for example, do an undergraduate in the UK and then go out and do a master's. And James and our team done that. And they're super popular because if you can send a 20 or a 21-year-old over there to play with 17-year-olds, you've got that maturity, you've got that physicality. So again, that exposure to playing with older players is only going to help your game because, you know, a 17-year-old lad that's maybe not physically as developed is going to have a disadvantage maybe against 21, 22-year-old lads that are in their fourth year there. So if you can kind of get used to that, it's only going to help your game.
Absolutely. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just thinking in terms of process. So when a young lad or whatever comes to you and says, right, I want to go, you know, I'm interested in going to the States, or they come through your trials, what is the process on their side? Do you go and find schools you might feel suitable to them and their grades and what they want?
Yeah, so I mean, we get over 10,000 applications a year now across all sports, and then the trials or footage is a good way to kind of see whether they're good enough. Beyond that, once somebody's been officially offered a place on the program, we have like an onboarding process, and as part of that, we would send you a questionnaire. Like, Jordan, have you got preferred states you'd rather? I mean, look, none of us want to be in Alaska, and we all want to be in Florida, but have you got preferred states where you've got friends or family? Like Gary said, he's been coaching out there. Maybe he'd want to go to a specific state. You prefer hot to cold weather? How important is the academics to you? How important is the football to you? And also, ultimately, what type of rough contribution have you got towards costs? Because the challenge is, you know, some lads will think, well, I'm a good player. I naively thought, I was at Ipswich, I'm a good player, I expect to get a full scholarship, I want everything covered. Well, the reality is, guess what? So does every other good player all across the world, including good American players that want that scholarship as well. So the contribution can be important, and I could talk all day about that. But what people have to realise is some schools are as low as $15,000 a year for tuition, food, and housing without scholarship, and then Harvard's 100 grand. So as you can imagine, you've got 85 grand's worth of variance. You're going to qualify for a certain amount of academic scholarship. But say, for example, Gary qualifies, it's a 50 grand a year school, and Gary qualifies for 25. And your budget's 10, you then need 15 off that coach to make it work financially. But again, I naively thought the coach must have a blank checkbook and say, well, I want Jordan and I want Gary and I want Liam and I'm going to give them all the scholarship. Each coach is restricted to roughly around 10 scholarships they can give each year. And also as an element of luck, because if they're graduating 3 goalkeepers this year, as much as they like Gary, who's a forward, the scholarship's going to go towards a goalkeeper. So yeah, that questionnaire is important, but also talking to coaches and having the parents on the call, because I might say, Gary, you should go to this school, and Gary doesn't want to go to Nebraska, he wants to go to New York. You know, we're there to guide our players towards what would be a good fit for them. But also as a player, I know I wanted to care about how many fans do we get, how big's the stadium, and where's the beach, those type of things. Whereas mum and dad are going to care about, yeah. Yeah, where's spring break going to be? But mum and dad are going to care about, you know, what's the coach like, what's the accommodation, the safety. Yeah. So it's really important. It's a joint decision, and we're kind of part of that with them. But then also, even beyond that, look, with football subjective, we've had coaches that we like and coaches that we don't. And it's also good to talk to other international players that are there. So if we've got a student we've already placed, we'll put them in touch straight away. But if not, we'll try and connect them to another international they've got. Because the coach might make it sound like you just signed for Liverpool or Real Madrid, but actually a player might say he's no good at coaching, there's nothing to do off campus. And the reason why we're taking this kind of slow, methodical process is to make sure there's no surprises when they get out there and it delivers exactly the experience that they want. As cliche as it is, we say as a business, our job is to get you graduated, not out to America, which is easy to say, but it's kind of that long-term view. And to your point, Jordan, providing that 4-year support for the players so that they don't get on a plane and come home after 6 months, because who does that look good on? Nobody.
What's really...
Go on, Gary. Sorry, mate. Cut you off again.
I'm trying to get in. Good you're coming up with some good points. What's great for me to hear is the synergy and the ethos of the way you guys work with the way that we try to treat our students in the college. I mean, I say the same thing to parents, you know, when I meet 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds talking about our job is to put you on that next step towards a career, not to just, get you to join the college or to get you to pass a qualification. It's a big step in your life as well as your career. And what's great to hear from you is the lengths you're going to prepare them for that. I think, speaking to current students who've been through that process is vital for me. Involving the parents as early as possible is vital, not just from the financial point of view, but from the, as we call it in college, the pastoral point of view. Thinking about where's my boy or my daughter, where's my son or daughter going to live? What's their lifestyle going to be like? Who are they going to be surrounded by? Who's going to be there in case they get injured or they get ill? These are all things that our parents and me as a parent would really value.
Yeah, it's a good point, because like if you go to university in the UK, if you're missing mum or you're not well, you just go home and then you get looked after for the weekend. But when you're 6,000 to 10,000 miles away, it's not so easy. So it's important to put all the groundwork in at the start, and then actually hopefully the journey is already put in place. Whereas if they're just going to a school where they're not going to enjoy it, it makes our life hard, because then a year later we're going to have to try and find them a different school. So it's definitely worth kind of putting all the graft in and getting to know the player, because it's not just one size fits all in terms of what school they should go to. You go to uni in the UK, like Jordan was saying, Loughborough, maybe you were looking at one or two universities. Well, in the States, there's thousands of different options, which is great, but also there's hundreds of different ways you could go wrong with it as well.
I think the interesting thing for me as well is, I'm sure a lot of our learners will be listening to this podcast now and they'll be thinking, America's a little bit of me and I'd love to have a go with that. But for someone who's done it, what did you learn? And now obviously, successfully in a good career, what things did you learn, not only about yourself, but just about life in general, being put from the UK and then being put in America to go and not fend for yourself, because I'm sure you had a great support group, but it's probably the first time you're standing on your own 2 feet, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I still can't cook. I think I lived off pasta and cereal for 4 years. But I think sometimes you just have to put yourself out of that comfort zone. Because I remember week one, I was sitting there and I was thinking, what have I done? What am I doing here? But when everything's new to you, you're going to find that. But the great thing with the States is, particularly if you're a student athlete, is 3 to 4 weeks before school even starts, you got pre-season. And so you'll be doing pre-season with the basketball team, the volleyball team, the swim team. So you're going to know like 400 or 500 people who are all like-minded, and it's a real community before you even get to that. And also, I was, and pretty much all the athletes are living with other players on your team. And so if there's other internationals, they've been through it as well. So they're going to really help you settle in. They'll have like international admissions. Again, the support network is absolutely massive over there. And that's not just in terms of academics. So you get academic support to make sure you're eligible, but also the mental health side of things, they're light years ahead of us, I think, to be honest. There's so much support for all of them, because it is so difficult to throw yourself in that environment. But yeah, I think in terms of learning, just putting yourself in a new culture and really adapting to it, and also putting yourself out there to meet new people, particularly at our school. There's so many different internationals. I think I'll have probably a sofa to stay on anywhere in the country if I want to go on a holiday. But it's just great to learn about new people and also about yourself, because you've got a lot of time on your own out there as well to really plan what you want to do. And for a lot of our lads, it really focuses them, because they might have, maybe not applied themselves fully to academics in the UK because you've got so many distractions, whether it be girls or football or PlayStation or all these things. But actually, when you're put in another country where you're there to get a degree, you're there to play football, all of a sudden we've got kids who maybe were 4s and 5s coming out with 7, 8s, 9s and A's, but also their game is developing so much because, I'm sure you guys you've seen when you've been out there, the facilities are incredible. The coaching's top notch. It's for me, it's the closest thing to being a pro without being one, because we were training twice a day. Depressingly fitter than I've ever been, looking back at my cardio status now. But we were, getting eat meals together, and strength and nutrition coaches. We were flying to games. Some of your games could be on ESPN. It's an unbelievable experience playing in front of thousands, to the point where actually, when I did move back, I did sign semi-pro. And when I was back playing in front of a man, his dog, and being a slow forward like me, just flicking the ball on for people, I decided that's probably not for me.
When we obviously, I'm sure we'll have learners now sort of going like they want to approach you or get involved. What do you look for in terms of a young person who's approaching you, in terms of how they carry themselves or what sort of person they are?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because you could have straight A's, you could be a good footballer, but there can also still be concerns with us as a company. And I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, but sometimes if I went on a call with a player, and it might be because they're shy, but if mum and dad are leading the conversation and they've got no questions themselves, or they haven't prepared for it, or that it doesn't just seem like they've actually put much investment into looking into it. Sometimes I get concerned that when mum and dad aren't there, how are you really going to react? Look, it's brilliant now. I mean, we barely had Skype when I went over. You can easily keep in touch with people, but that worries me sometimes, because I just think when mum and dad, but also it can be the making of you. So how are you going to use that experience? We've had athletes where we thought, oh, we're really worried here because mum and dad, rightly or wrongly, are very involved in every single decision this kid makes. And then that kid that comes to mind to me right now is absolutely loving it out there, because maybe they've got that freedom to really learn more about themselves and apply themselves and kind of develop at an important age. It's a big decision at that age. So yeah, I think preparation's always key. And that's also what we tell the players before you go on a call with a coach. Don't, finish playing PlayStation and then go on and think, oh, what's this school? You've got everything at your disposal. Look at their campus video, look at their record, watch 20 minutes of their game, ask them questions. And believe me, the coach will then ring me up and go, love that kid Jordan, I want to get him. I loved his attitude. And that's the first thing they'll say, not, oh, I loved his video, I just loved how I got on with him. And from my experience for Americans, that's a really important part, kind of having that rapport, because if you've got an attitude problem, they're not going to want to sign you, basically.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important points, not just only in football where we've all operated, but I think in life in general. Like, you could be sitting here now watching it thinking, I'm good enough to play in America, I'm good enough to play in the MLS one day, which is fine. It's good to have dreams, but it's the tangible stuff on the other side that you really need to have. It's the attitude, the ability to want to learn, the ability to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. And I think obviously you're better qualified than me to say this, but just on a career point, if you are thinking about making a big step like that, maybe don't worry so much about how you're performing on the pitch, which is obviously important. It's the other side of it. Are you ready? Are you mature enough? And are you open to that learning? So I think, yeah, I mean, listening to you, the biggest regret in my life is not going to America.
Shave that beard off. We'll get you out there. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think, the beard and about 3 stone and we'll be flying. But yeah, I think
a couple of kids in tow.
yeah. No, it's as Liam said, we got Skype and StreamYard now. We're fine.
What I would say to your point there, Jordan, is that every year we get lads who decide they don't want to do it, and then I'll see them 2-3 years later. I wish I'd have gone to America. We've never had anyone who's gone out there, done 4 years, and go, I wish I'd have stayed in the UK and not lived in Chicago for 4 years and come out debt free. So I think that kind of speaks volumes to what an opportunity can be. And mums who are listening won't want to hear it, but probably about a third of our players do end up living out there permanently, like your friend that you were saying who's in Oklahoma. So.
Just coming back briefly to your point, Liam, about I guess doing your homework and preparing for what's essentially an interview at some point with a coach and being vetted, because that's what it is, isn't it? You spoke about, you compared it to the transfer window before. If you're a coach looking at hundreds of players, you're going to use every resource at your disposal to make the right decision. We're trying to encourage as much as possible our students now to utilize LinkedIn to create a professional platform for themselves, to demonstrate what they've been doing in college, both academically and on the pitch, and to kind of put their best foot forward, so that when they've got an opportunity, whether it be an interview for a job at Specsavers, or whether it be an interview with a coach at a university or a college in Chicago, that they've got something there that's like, look, here's my journey, this is what I do. And rather than what might pop up when you look for a student, like their Instagram or their TikTok, you've got something that's a bit more professional. What are your feelings on that, and how helpful would that be?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is kind of also part of our job. So we've got like a coach's website where we will kind of showcase their highlights, their academic achievements. And to your point, and I always say to players, you can only make a good first impression once. So, if Jordan sends me some videos of having a kickabout over the field with his mate, start promoting that. Actually, does that best reflect you as a player? If not, let's wait a little bit more time. Okay, scholarships come and go, but let's put together a video where you're proud to say, look, that's me as a player, because believe me, it can make such an impact. And then, yeah, beyond that, look, again, we can help with that. So we send them example questions that you should be asking to a coach, and also give them tips on what you should be researching before you go on there. But also, it's a learning experience, and I think you need to be open-minded to it, because some lads will go, oh, I don't like the look of that school because it's not, I don't know, Stanford, or, set the bar high. But actually then, have that call. You might learn some things you liked about it and some things you didn't, that are then going to help you with the school when it is a good fit. So yeah, I think just keeping that open mind to it. But yeah, we're definitely here to showcase our players in the right way. And to your point, assistant coach will probably have at least 150 players they're looking at one time for a scholarship. And it's really kind of a bit of a meat market, because as much as if you guys were signed up looking at 50 schools, they're going to be looking at least 50 players, and it can be as cutthroat as the scholarship's gone, okay, we move on to the next one, or you don't accept it and then someone else does. So unfortunately there's limited scholarships out there, but yeah, because we've been doing it for so long, we can get the right eyes on our players to make sure they have those opportunities.
Fantastic. I mean, we said at the start, Liam, before you come on, that half an hour goes quick, and it really has gone quick. Just as a bit of a message to our students, we've had that ticket going along the bottom for most of it. You can get onto the website at any time, www.ussportscholarships.com/apply. If again you want to have a little bit of a chat to your tutors or coaches, most of our staff are very aware of the general process. However, we will be staying in touch with Liam. We'll be asking Liam to reach out and maybe do some remote calls to some of our sites, and we'll be trying to set up our own dedicated trial as well alongside Liam. I know he's helped with plenty of our former students in the Norfolk and Suffolk area, and in Sheffield as well. So thanks so much for your time, Liam. Really appreciate it, and appreciate you sharing both your journey with us and the advice that you've given to our students.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you both. And what I'd say for the learners that are listening, to your point, is if you're looking to go next year, as in you're in a second year student, time's definitely of the essence. You could take a gap year though, which is something that some people aren't aware of. And then again, if you're a first year, obviously you've got time on your side. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some trials locked in with you guys all across the country, and see the next generation coming through.
Cheers, Liam. Really appreciate that.
Yep. Cheers,
Thanks,
Jordan.
Liam. Take care.